G'day guys, and welcome back to another video on WA Now and Then. Now this particular video is a little bit off topic, I guess, for the channel, but we're going to have a look at the shed. And for those of you who are used to the channel will pretty well be aware by now that I'm a walking advert for Aldi, so you're going to see a lot of Aldi products in here. But just a bit of a fun look around at my tiny little garden shed and the gear I've got inside and the stuff I use to take away when we go on trips, that sort of thing. So let's hop inside and get started. Now, as you can see, it's not the most organised shed on the planet, but I try to keep things under some sort of control. For any of you who are familiar with Auto Expert John Cadogan's channel and you've seen his workshop, well, that's what I would aspire to if I had the room and the money, but this is what I've actually ended up with. I more or less know where everything is, so I don't have to look too hard for things. Now, the main reason I really wanted to bring you into the shed this morning was to have a look at this box. This is what we take away when we go on trips, and it contains bits and pieces that I think we might need, and quite a few things you need on the road that you can forget to take away. So it's really good to have a box like this that you can just chuck in the back of the coaster, chuck in the back of the four-wheel drive, and you know most of the things you're going to need are there. You know, fuses, electrical connections, bolts, washers, nuts, even little clips, spare fuses, some snap together electrical connections. These are actually quite useful if you want to make a quick electrical connection and join something up. Put your wires in the back there, these two go together, and your connection is a temporary one, so it's useful for anything that you want to unplug. They're quite handy. And this little box is double-sided, so you get double bang for your buck with this. And as you can see on this side, other bits and pieces, O-rings, some shrink wrap, more nuts and bolts, lots of nuts and bolts. You never know what you're going to need in the way of nuts and bolts. Some clips here, some little stick-on wire clips, a couple of Anderson plugs, general connectors, cupboard clips, that sort of thing. That could be useful for the coaster, you never know. So really good to put together a little box like this, keep it stocked up, and other bits and pieces there, as you can see. Keep it stocked up so it's ready to go when you're going to go away. You don't have to really think about what you're going to take. You don't have to keep it in the car all the time. It's small enough. It's actually quite heavy. That'll be quite a few kilos. It's probably about 5 or 6 kilos worth of stuff in there, but it's all ready to go. You just chuck it in the back, and you don't really have to think too much about what to take. Of course, tools are another issue, and we've sort of covered that before. If you look back at our Shark Day video series, I think we've got some of that in there. But this spare parts box is really, really very handy. But while I'm in here, I also wanted to talk about Aldi gear. We buy tons of it. Tons and tons of it. Yeah, you can see these screwdrivers sitting here. That's an Aldi one. Very useful. Sits in the workshop. Got all sorts of screwdrivers. Yeah, okay, they're not the greatest quality, but they're cheap. Easy to replace if anything goes wrong with any of them. Nice little set. Just sits there on the bench, and I can find anything very quickly if I need it. One of the other jobs I'm working on at the moment, of course, you probably see this sitting on the bench. That's a light. It's a bit big, but that's what I'm going to replace the toilet light with in the coaster when the coaster comes back. Now, some of you will know that the coaster went off to the workshop on the 11th of April. It's now the 22nd of May, and it's still in the workshop. The engine is being pulled apart, or has been pulled apart, I should say, to find out where all the coolant was going. and unfortunately, yes, it was a bit of a mess and is being put back together gradually. But anyway, let's get back to these products I was going to talk about. I've got a little drawer down here. They keep these little box things in. Now, a lot of the Aldi stuff comes in these awesome little cases. They're brilliant. I mean, this stuff costs generally about $9–10. Lovely little cases. In this case, it's a set of drills. Now again, they're not going to be top quality drills, but they work pretty well. There's nothing really wrong with them. I'm not really kind to drills anyway, so I don't want to buy really high quality ones and bugger them up, so I buy these sets. Very easy to use. Great little cases. I love the cases that they put these things in. Here's another one. Similar sort of case, well, same sort of case, different colour. Masonry bits. There's a slightly less expensive case. You've got some plug makers. They're very useful, and they're very useful for drilling small holes to put cables through. And little grinder wheels, those sorts of things. All in, yeah, pretty nice little cases. So yeah, I guess you can sort of work out why I'm a bit of an Aldi fanboy. You've got these side cutters, so you drill through all sorts of stuff I would never have known existed if it wasn't for Aldi. You drill through with the top, and then you use this part of it to actually move the thing sideways and cut. Useful stuff. So I'm not going to go through everything that we've got from Aldi. It would take a month of Sundays. But, you know, they sell all sorts of gear, even down to these sort of rulers. Good for the workshop. It's got levels on it, markers, decent metal ruler, good size too. And we do buy their electrical gear. And where are we? This one could be pretty useful. This is a rattle gun, electrical battery powered rattle gun. Very handy to get stuck nuts off your wheels. Most of their electrical stuff is like 3 to 5 year warranty, so that's pretty good. We get these little ratchet spanners. I think I've got a couple of sets of these. I've got one in the shed and one in the 4x4, and they're cheap enough so you can do that. You don't have to think about, oh, I'm going to move the set from the shed to the car. I just buy 2 sets because they're cheap and they work. And quite often, I got to say, these things get knocked down. If you keep your eye open in Aldi, watch out for when the specials are over and these have been left and they want to get rid of them, they'll drop the price sometimes as much as 50%. The other brand I quite like is Azito. I've had Azito gear for years, and everything I've ever bought from them is still working. I've had nothing fail whatsoever. This one, little reciprocating saw. If you don't want to take a chainsaw with you in the bush, but you want to cut up wood, these are great for that. You can chuck one of these in. It doesn't take up as much room as a chainsaw, and you get the nice long blades on these, and they can cut through wood pretty quickly, so you can cut off branches, dead branches and things like that for your campfires. That's a really good thing to have sitting in the back of the car. And up on the roof of the shed here, you can see some of our fishing rods. And we were pretty keen fishermen at one time. We're fishing less these days than we used to. But still got all the rods there, and I just can't resist if I see these things in an op shop and it's anything like halfway decent. I tend to pick them up because, again, I'm pretty rough on gear. I don't really look after it as well as I should, and stuff gets broken. So if you've got a rod that only costs you $5 or $10, way better than having to go to the fishing shop and pay $50 or $100 for it. Got the little water snake engine for the kayak sitting up there. That hasn't seen a lot of use yet. Still hoping to get out and do a decent trip with the kayak, which hasn't happened yet. That was what it was bought for, or was one of the things it was bought for. And you can see the electrical gear sitting up there, trimmers, drills, screwdrivers, all sorts of sanders and saws. Not as neat as I'd like to have it, but I just don't have a lot of room in this shed, unfortunately. If you do a bit of work on your own vehicles, this is something you really should have. This is a torque wrench. You can get all sorts of different torque wrenches. This is the only one I've got at the moment. And again, of course, it was an Aldi version. Nice little set, comes in a decent little box. And if you need to get the correct tightness on bolts, and that could be really, really important, over tightening bolts stresses the nuts and will cause failures eventually. Under tightening them means they'll come undone. So a torque wrench is really something that's quite essential if you do some of your own mechanical work. And here you can see we've got a line trimmer, again Aldi. We've had that for quite a while now. It works a treat. It's probably the best line trimmer I've ever had, petrol driven rather than those silly electrical ones. Of course you still get the snipper part of it, the little cables breaking, but this one's very easy to replace them. Just carry a few in your pocket. Behind that we've got a 240 volt air compressor. In each of the cars we've got one of the handheld battery powered air compressors, plus in the 4x4 we've got a proper air compressor. Now if we go on a longer trip, sometimes you want more gear than I carry in just the general spares box. This little case, this is a Bunnings special. I think they're about $15. They come with a whole bunch of boxes inside, but I don't use those in the case itself. But in here you can see a whole bunch of other bits and pieces that you might need. Velcro, stick-on Velcro. I've got a can of Glide, Easy Glide there for helping when things get stuck, ropes and that won't pull through or whatever. Some electrical connections, lights, again more Anderson plugs, roll of wire, some metal strapping, maybe you need to tie something together, you know, reasonably firmly. That's really useful for that. Now we were at one time using a lot of 12 volt plugs, these low voltage plugs. I'm tending to move away from those now to the Anderson plugs, but I've still got a few around, so I carry some spares of these pre-wired. Of course we've got a whole bunch of these. You can't go anywhere without zip ties. We've got different sizes of these. These are just the small ones. Most of those bits and pieces come from Aldi. We've got an adapter there if you happen to be towing something or you need to help somebody with a trailer that it's got a different plug to you, whatever. Good to carry one of those. Simple things, elastic bands. So I've got some stick-on. This is interesting stuff. This is if you want to get a bit of grip on something, either like a side of a boat or going up a ladder on your vehicle. This is stick-on, and that's like a sort of sandpaper. You can hear it on my hand there. So you stick that on to the metal surface and that stops it from being slippery. So that's the box we take really when we go away for weeks at a time in the coaster. So that's in addition to the other box, because in the coaster of course we've got a lot more room. Now a few electrical bits and bobs, spare switches. We've even got some spare supports for the cupboards, things like that. So that's one box, and I'm about to show you another box that looks just like this one. And in box number 2 we have a bunch of other boxes. And here is box number 2, and we've got some spare Anderson plugs in there. We have a nice box of electrical connectors, and I use these all the time. I'm always mucking around with electronics and doing this and doing that. Some of these need replacing already. They're running down, but very useful to buy these sets. They're, I think, around about $9–12, something like that. Dead cheap compared to other places. And of course with the connectors you need shrink wrap. That's nothing of any great consequence. It's mostly key rings and clips and things like that. But again, it's a little set that comes with carabiner clips, which I've already used for other things or already put in other boxes. Rivets. Rivets are very handy when you're away and you need to fix something in a hurry. This one is just odds and sods, nuts, bolts, connectors. So that's not the actual contents that's on the label. And we've got some eyes for canvas and the tool for putting them in. Little box there with some other bits and pieces, mostly screws in that one. But we've got some wheel nuts there and some tie downs. And then we come to the O-ring set. So whatever O-ring you need, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to find it in here. As you can see, that's a pretty good set of O-rings. And of course that's a Audi. Audi. I know, you get sick of me saying it. But I just love the gear they sell. It's simple, it's cheap, it works. And I buy it because of those things. So all that fits quite neatly into the other box. Now, I don't usually take this one away. That's not likely to go off in the 4x4 or something like that. We've got the smaller kit that you saw before that is used for that, and that's got a smaller assortment of this sort of gear in it. And for those of you who didn't see it on our Shark Bay video, this is the main spanner kit that we take away if we're going somewhere remote-ish in the 4x4. And I do make a lot of use of this even at home. This sits in the shed when I'm not using it in the 4x4. So useful, very useful set of spanners. I do have a big set of spanners that lives in the 4x4. So they're handy if I ever need them. But this is the main set I take for working on a vehicle if we have a major breakdown or something like that. Something really needs to be pulled apart. It's super cheap, it's not Aldi, wow, big surprise, but had no problems with it. It's been very good and quite happy to recommend it. Now, possibly the most used tool I own is this one. What is it? It's a battery powered drill or screwdriver. It's Ozito. I've had it for a long time. Has a 1.5 amp hour battery on it, and this is used for everything from building the trailer that we did last winter to, I don't know, whatever I need to drill holes or screw things in, this thing comes out. It's the most used tool I've got for sure, and it's worked flawlessly. It's an absolutely lovely little tool. And the bag I keep it in, we've got Op Shop, nice tough little bags, and we carry just a little mobile charger with that. We've got a bigger one on the bench here, but that's a little mobile one for charging the batteries up. That's really handy. And we have all the bits and pieces we need to operate it stored in here. This little thing here is for getting screws in or screws out at a funny angle. You put that in the drill, and as you can see here, that rotates. This is a similar idea, but it's got a drill chuck on it, so it's for drilling at right angles into areas you can't get to otherwise. As you can see, this is a really good tough bag. We'd get these at op shops for $2 or $3. Absolutely brilliant. And of course we've got a tap and die set there in case we need it. Set of drills. And if you've got a head of a screw that's gone bung and burred over, that is for removing screws with burred heads. And another set of useful little bits and pieces for woodwork, drilling bigger holes, and just general drill bits there for woodwork. So that set is one that will go with me anywhere I go on a trip. It's so useful, and it has come in handy that many times I wouldn't dare leave it at home. It goes along with this, which is a Ryobi set of drills, screwdriver heads, tech screw drivers, so those bits and pieces come in very handy as well. Back there, one more set. You can fit quite a bit in these cases, and as you can see, and not exactly a brace and bit, that's the bit from brace and bit. Attach it to your drill and knock holes into wood very, very quickly. Of course there's a ton of other stuff I've got in the shed here, but I'm not going to go through and bore you to death with all that. All sorts of gardening stuff, fishing stuff, polishers. I've got no room to put it, of course. This is a very tiny little shed, but I do the best I can with what I've got, and it gives you a bit of an idea of the kind of junk I've got sitting around and I use for doing the jobs I need to do on the vehicles. And yeah, a bit of a look at my man cave in here, and I do keep a lot of this. That's one thing I didn't mention. A lot of wire. I'm always using wire for stuff, so I keep a lot of spare wire around the place, so that if I need it, I don't have to rush off to JCar or somewhere like that. And I should mention, give a mention to the places I buy things. Aldi, you know, is an absolute dead set certainty for us. But of course there's also Bunnings. I find a lot of the Bunnings stuff, the little stuff at Bunnings, all the little spare things, the rivets and blah 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 like that, bloody expensive for what they are. Aldi are way, way cheaper. So if I can grab the stuff at Aldi, put it away and keep it till I need it, it's way better than having to go down to Bunnings. Bunnings say, oh yes, cheapest stuff and all that. Bullshit. They're not anywhere near as cheap as Aldi is when it comes to those sort of little spare bits and pieces. Another store, of course I still find Bunnings really useful. I love the place and I do buy a heap of stuff there. Another place of course is JCar, for all the bits and pieces you need for your car that you can't get anywhere else, all these funny little electrical connectors and that. It's great to be able to go into one store and be able to get what you want when you want it. And I found most of their gear's okay. The biggest complaint I've had with anything from JCar has been the reversing camera, because the actual cameras on that set cloud over time. They've become utterly useless now, and I've got not much choice but to replace them. The screen that you look at is fine, but the cameras themselves, the plastic covers on them, they cloud over because of sunlight after a few years, and they've just become utterly useless now. So I'm obviously going to have to go and buy another camera, but what I'll do this time, I'll put a cover over it, so when it's not in use and we're not actually driving, we'll cover it up to keep the sunlight off it, and I've been told that's the way to go. Another store we go to is of course Super Cheap. We get oils and polishes and all that sort of car stuff from them. They're handy for that because they carry most of the stuff you're going to need. We did get that nice set of spanners from them. And yeah, I have got one thing I haven't shown you. Okay, the toolkit. I did show you this before, but if you haven't seen the Shark Bay series, you won't know about it. So I'm just going to quickly, before I end, show you that. Okay, this bag here is the portable toolkit. If we're away on a long trip with the 4x4, this is what goes with us. I'm not going to go through all of this in detail because there's too much to go through, but generally all the main tools we need go in here. Rivet gun, there's even some spare wire. Because we go away in the coaster, we have water tanks and that in there, and even in the trailer with the four-wheel drive, so some plumber's tape, and just generally all the tools that I think I'm going to need for working on the vehicle if something goes wrong, or working on the trailer, or whatever I need to do. All of that goes into here. Even got some things like a few spare bits and pieces. We've got a fuse box there, so all sorts of bits and pieces that you think you might need when you're on the road. Now, I haven't weighed all the stuff I take away, but I can tell you it probably weighs about 20 kilos. Even something like that, a little soldering iron. Very handy if you're on the road. So this is the travelling toolkit, I guess you would call it. Allen keys, a whole heap of Allen keys, different sizes, probably 2 or 3 sets of them in here. It's easy to drop and lose. and that just gets picked up. Oh, feel the weight of that. The weight of that is pretty, on its own has got to be 8 kilos at least. I wouldn't mind betting that's 8 kilos. Okay, so that's it. Pretty well shown you everything I think is interesting enough to have a look at. There's a heap more gear, but I'm not going to keep going all day doing this, so I'm going to let you go and say thanks for having a look at what we do here. And we are hoping to do a Goldfields trip by mid-June, crossing our fingers that that coaster is going to be back and we are going to go away and not have any problems. Please, please. It will be the first trip in a while where we haven't had problems, if we manage it. But that's plan A at the moment, and we're just nearing the end of May now, so it's coming down to the wire. Hoping to get the coaster back next week and get it all loaded up, prepared and ready to go. New house batteries in it, new starter batteries in it, and of course this engine is being partially rebuilt or fixed or whatever at the moment. God knows what that's going to cost, but you just got to suck it up if you do this sort of stuff. Got no choice. And we're looking forward to being out there at least within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you hopefully next week. Cheers guys, see ya.